rock icon Debbie Harry, who's looking every bit of the 70-year-old. But, I mean, she's trying to keep it together.
Yeah,
I mean, she is. Who became a 70s and 80s sex symbol as a lead singer of Blondie, opined on the topic in the forthcoming book, Portrait of an Artist, Conversations with Trailblazing Creative Women.
That's interesting to say who she talks to.
Yeah, she's in here with Uma Thurman, Kate Blanchett, Julianne Moore, FKA Twigs, and many other women who are just talking about what it's like to be a woman in this country and just being trailblazing creative women. She told author and artist Hugo Herta Marin, the only thing that isn't about sex is politics. I had to read that. I was like, the only thing that isn't about sex is politics. Everything else in the world is about sex. She said everything in the world outside politics is sex. Now, you can make an argument that politics is sex too. She said what you listen to, what you read, where you live, and who you are all has to do with sex. Now, she wasn't necessarily, that's the only excerpt we got. So I'm kind of like, okay, it's a great excerpt because it made me really think.
Help me understand.
We're talking about the intimate part of sex.
Yeah, right.
We're talking about sex, male and female. And I think that's where we could open our conversation. The 76-year-old added of her band's CBGB roots, punk was also by chaos and deconstructing musical ideas. There's a lot of satire on making fun of customs, the rules of adulthood, and what's been considered proper behavior maybe 10 years before. There was also a big sexual component to it, which became very apparent. It was no longer just about good old boys taking their lives on the road and picking up dirty women.
Okay.
Do you have anything you want to say on that? I was kind of like,
okay.
Sounds like she's got some good stories to share as well.
Yeah, I mean,
you and I had this conversation about rock women. There just aren't a lot of them.
Yeah.
Pat Benatar, Debbie Harry, Chrissy Hine, who had a birthday yesterday. I'm trying to think. The Hart sisters and Nancy Wilson. They're just, compared to men, it's probably 1% of.
Right.
Now, other genres, country music is a lot of women.
Right. Pop.
Blues music was a lot of men. Gospel music was a lot of women. Christian music is about half and half. But when it comes to classic rock, and I bring up classic rock because it was the one that was the most chaotic and deconstructive, according to Debbie Harry, because gospel singers had groupies, but not groupies like classic rockers have, and what would happen back in the 60s and 70s. You just think about the run-up they had at Woodstock. You had Joan Baez.
There you go. Right.
Okay.
But even Joan Baez, I mean, that Joan Baez is...
The Go-Go's? Bengals?
Yeah, but that's all. I mean, again, yes, but they're pop. Joan Baez is folk.
Yep.
They're not classic rock. Bengals are not classic rock. Go-Go's are not classic. Right? No, I still don't understand. If you think about some of the most iconic voices, just voices. I forget the musical genre.
Joan Jett. Someone just tweeted Joan Jett.
Well, that's what I mean. But so, like, again, we don't see, I'm making these, we don't see Adele rock.
Yeah.
But she obviously could sing. Pat Benatar was trained as an opera singer.
Yeah.
It is, we've had this conversation a lot. It is fascinating to me how and why it didn't happen. And what's interesting, oh man, we need to get a hotline to Damon. Because this is an interesting thing. Why don't you see it? Is it a sort of gendery bias thing? Right? Because I mean it doesn't make sense given the talent of women.
I think based on the time we were going through in classic rock genre, the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it wasn't necessarily proper during our generation of what women and no, but 70s and 80s it was still a man's world. I mean, but that this whole women's movement thing has really been like the last 20 years.
But I'm saying, but listen, it's always been okay to be a female.
And you also in most cases you always had a female that had a lot of backup singers that were men too.
That's right. But what's interesting is think about the different rock genres. In the 60s, 70s, and 80s, it's not like you didn't have female performers. They were in different genres. So that's what's kind of strange to me. It's okay for you to do pop, if you're a female.
Sure.
It's okay. Let's go 80s. You can new wave, right? You can be whatever.
But you don't want to be too crazy. Like, could you imagine if a female tried to pull off Alice Cooper's bit in the 70s? We'd think she was crazy. I don't know if she saw. I don't know if she'd sell tickets. I mean, I think about Joan Jett and the Runaways, and just how punk they were, like the Sex Pistols. I mean, but they weren't as received because I think it scared the shit out of guys. It did. You would, if you were a guy, you weren't going to see Pat Benatar or Joan Jett. You would go because they were rockers. You'd see more people now going to Heart concerts, but I think it was more of a women's movement. They weren't trying to make a movement. They were just playing music. They were just rockers. I don't. If classic rock came back full force right now and all of a sudden radio stations are playing the type of music that classic rock is, I don't think you'd have any more females just because I don't. Well, what do we think about Miley Cyrus?
Well, we said the same thing. It stop. Don't cover. She could pull it off, but
she's not pulling it off.
Right.
It's uncomfortable. Even when she sings with rockers like Billy Idol.
But you know why? But again, it's
and she's about as crazy as we got when it comes to females.
Yeah, but I think it's because I think part of it is like being, what is it called? Typecasting. Right? It's Hannah Montana. It's Pop Miley. But yeah, you're right. Because it's sexual party Miley.
It is.
She should be able to come over. What's wrong?
She's trying. But I also think it plays along with our stereotypes of women are calmer, more provocative, more thought-provoking. They write more poetry into music. And Nancy Griffith, who passed away a couple of, I just don't think it was as widely as accepted.
Pink could be
but Pink is relatively new. I mean, she's what, 15, 20 years in? I mean,
that's what I'm saying. Pink could cross over.
And they love her. But I don't know how many guys go to Pink concerts. Lesbians go to Pink concerts.
I go to Pink concert. Pink rocks.
You're a lesbian.
I'm not. So guys did not go to
Cher?
Pat Benatar?
Cher? I mean, we know Cher is a big lesbian draw. And it's fine. I'd go to
now. You'd go to Cher then because you thought she was hot.
No, you go because of Sonny Bono.
No, come on. What about Pat? Okay, Pat Benatar.
There were no guys. Pull up a 1970s when she's singing Gypsies and Queens or whatever it was. There ain't no guys in the audience. There's not one. There's not one guy seeing Cher in the 70s and 80s. They go see her now because they're gay. I would go just to say I went to a Cher concert because I still think she's amazing. I'm broad brushing here. But what I'm saying is,
okay, how about Pat Benatar? Let's go.
But I don't think it's because guys didn't like female rockers, because female rockers did really well.
That's what I mean. Well,
Heart was killing it. They've sold millions of records. Pat Benatar was huge.
Right.
Then again, Pat Benatar kicked it. She's like, I'm having a child. I'm out. I'm not going to do it anymore.
There had to be something that kept the women out of it. It's the male patriarchy. I'm telling you.
No, I think you're right.
That's what I mean. It's the culture.
As classic rock is it's not waning. It's as big as it's ever been.
Well, it's canalized.
But I mean, you just don't hear classic rock.
It's canalized.
Yeah.
It's canalized. There's Damon said it. I think Damon said it.
Yeah.
It's still to me, I can't wrap my head around when did classic rock start, and is it done in terms of new classic rock?
I want to read more about this book. It's enthralled me to want to pick this thing up, because when she talks about the sex part of what is she talking about? I'm assuming Debbie Harry had groupies. That's really interesting, because if you got a lot of male bands that got background singers who are females.
Yep.
And they got groupies, right? I mean, the 70s and 80s, there were groupies at every door, and they were hitting everything that moved. Just ask Bob Dylan. If you had Debbie Harry or a female rocker now who was in her 20s, and you had an all-male band, what would be their response or their reaction to male groupies coming backstage afterwards and her being with them?
Whose response? What would whose response be?
The rest of the band. If you had a female singer with four guys playing backup.
So you got Miley's and she's got four backups, male.
And they were a band. Now Miley doesn't have a band.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, okay, that's a little off, because Miley's already superseded that. I'm talking about a rock band.
Yeah.
Let's say the Runaways was Joan Jett, and the rest of the guys were guys. Yeah.
Go-Go's with
Belinda Carlisle was the lead singer, and there were four guys singing. I've seen it. I've seen it like in Holiday Inn bars,
What?
Lounge Lizards,
So-
where there's a female singer because she could hit the journey notes,
Right.
and the rest of the band are guys.
Okay.
And I've seen how they've reacted when guys are hitting on her.
What's wrong?
They're very protective.
Oh, protective. Okay, so it's not.
What are you doing?
Yeah.
She's like, I'm a big girl. I'm 36 years old.
Yeah.
I've been singing for this band for 20 years.
Yeah.
I'm good. And they're like, they're very protective of their female singer. And that's not, women don't do that.
What? Protect?
No, have gratuitous sex after concerts.
Oh, yeah. Right.
Men do. It just adds to their mystique. It adds to their legend.
It's the
There's not a
patriarchy,
lead
like-
singer in a classic rock band who hasn't been with groupies. God, every
Right. No, you're
AC/DC
right.
sings about it every single
Right. So
song.
if we knew that Pink's married, but if we knew that Pink was having sex with every single groupie, we'd be like, oh my God, right? This is a classic. The girl who has a lot of sex, we call her slut. If the guy has a sex, he's a stud. Hasn't changed one
We
bit.
just assume that female singers or female front runners in bands don't have they have groupies, but they would never,
Well, yeah,
because women are
groupies.
smarter than that. Guys are animals. We're lizard brain.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, there's an 18-year-old. She's got a miniskirt on. She wants to show me her
Right.
boobs. Come on backstage. Women are kind of like,
Yeah, I mean, no. I mean, again, move over to the pop or
because
the
guys and girls are looked upon differently based on their sexual prowess. When a guy's in high school and he's getting after it, he's a stud. When a girl's getting after it in high school, she's a slut. It's unfortunate, but that's the way we look at it. It's not fair. There was always that one girl who was overdeveloped when she was 16 or 17. She got caught kissing some guy in the smoking pit, and all of a sudden the word went around that she was a slut, which was really sad.
Oh, I got one.
Okay?
Yeah.
But the guy who was 16 or 17 in the
Yeah.
smoking pit, who was hitting everything
Right.
he moved in the senior class, he was a stud.
I mean, that's generational. Gwen Stefani, and no doubt. All male, right? Male band. Well, she would.
I'd be really interested to find out how many girls in bands actually hang out with groupies. Because guys will grab on anything.
Yeah,
I'm just telling you.
I
mean,
know.
it's-
I
it's-
agree. I mean,
there's not a rock and roller, Damon John, anybody. Austin Hanks, they've all gotten their share. Women are very selective in that manner.
yeah, I know.
Women aren't just going to sleep with some
This
dude
is
that was on the
this
front
is
row,
men
but
or
guys
pigs.
will.
This is men or pigs.
We are pigs.
This is it. I mean, like,
We take anything we get our hands onto.
Yep.
Particularly if we know we don't have to see it again. We're not going back to Cleveland this weekend, are we? Good. It's sad, but that is what rock and roll, and maybe that's what she means by the sex part. I need to know what she means by saying that sex is everything but politics.
am I having a hard time because I'm too much of a Fern guy? Like, that just, I always say the same thing. It's like, I feel like we can do better.
We can always do.
Because
We can always do
because I'm a
better.
too touchy-feely guy?
No, it's because you broke too early. You were getting after it on surfboards when you were 16, and you got through that. You just,
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, you had your 2-year window, dude, of getting after it, and knocking boots on the fins, and you were done.
Yeah. No, that's true.
Most guys are still knocking boots.
No, I mean, that's true. I started early.
You started
went
reading books.
hard, and yeah,
Try to take that 2-year window and turn it into 20 years.
that's true. But
You're a rarity. You're an
But-
anomaly.
here's the thing I don't understand. I firmly believe that, oh, God, I got to be careful because like kids. Every person should have their years of sowing their oats. You got to be careful because I got a 20-year-old daughter.
They should have their years, or they do have their years.
They do. I feel like you have to get it out of your system. Because what you don't
Okay.
want to do, the problem is it doesn't make sense.
Not for sake of doing it, but it just should happen.
Because if it's going to happen, let it happen before you ever get married.
Oh, yeah.
No,
for
but,
sure.
but you see a lot of guys who never, like, it's almost like they never went through that completely.
Mm-hmm.
And,
And they think one bachelor party will get them through.
that's exactly. You got to
You
have,
can't do it one night.
you have to have, I've said this, and I think it works. I'm just trying to think. I think it works for every sexual identity, every gender identity, even if you're gender fluid, and even unless you're asexual. If you're asexual, this would not work. Okay. Because if you're pansexual, it'd work too.
And what's
Okay.
asexual again?
What?
What's asexual again?
Asexual is interesting, and it's on a continuum, but it's that you just don't have a whole lot of sexual drive.
Yeah.
I mean, people are like, it's low libido, and it probably is, but it's just kind of the way you are.
Yeah.
Okay. You should have a time in which you're with somebody because of the intimacy. And you learn that there is more to life, more to relationships.
Only because of the intimacy.
Not only, you didn't get into it for that reason.
But that's the best part of your relationship.
That's what's happening, that you sort of realize.
I agree. Yeah.
That you realize that, oh my gosh, I was attracted to this person. I thought this person was great. The intimacy was amazing. And then over time, what ended up happening was the intimacy was amazing and nothing else really developed. And so if you evolve, you come to realize that, okay, the intimacy can only be so much.
Yeah.
What you don't want to see is in a marriage, right? You don't want to see it in a marriage.
And we put a lot of stock into the intimate part of a relationship.
Yes.
I know a lot of guys that stay in relationships because the sex part is amazing. And they think, not just because it feels good, but because they are as one. And if we can be on the same emotional algorithms when we're together for these 3 hours, that there's got to be more to it. Because when we're together and we're looking at each other, we're such a connected. We're so vulnerable. We're sharing our feels. We say things to each other, and then the minute they're apart and they put their clothes back on, it's like they're two totally different people. You know why?
Because I think this is where guys have to evolve more. It is easy for a guy to be vulnerable and caring and creative and emotionally engaged during sex when they're intimate.
Yeah.
And then what happens is, so you're this person's Jekyll and Hyde. And you're that way. And she or he is like, oh my God, look at them. Look, they touch me in a soft way. They say beautiful things to me. They're fully engaged in me. And then we get our clothes on, like, what the hell? Where'd he go?
Yeah.
Where'd they go? And guys have a really hard time staying that emotionally engaged outside. And you want to know the fastest way to ruin a relationship or get divorced? Be only good in bed. Be only good in bed. I don't mean just physically good in bed. Be only caring and engaged in bed, and then put your clothes on, go have something to eat, and then go watch a football game. She instantly, your stock goes down about 50%.
And I would say that if you asked people what are the most important parts of a relationship, they're obviously going to say trust, loyalty, looks will be in there, but I bet you sex is probably usually about fourth or fifth.
Bad sex, sexual problems, when there are intimacy problems, they are about 50% of the driver of the relationship failure. So if there's intimacy problems, and I don't mean performance, it's not good sex.
Yep.
That creates a huge rift in the relationship. However, what people don't understand is the flip is not true. If the sex is great, it is not the primary. It's not the primary driver of the success in the relationship. Yep. That's what people always assume, is that if the sex is good, because of what you said, the rest will be But if the sex is bad, it creates all kinds of other problems.
And what's interesting about the sex part too is you can make an argument that's the easiest part in a relationship to work on, unless there's been some type of trauma.
Yeah.
Where it's all mental.
Yeah.
Because we know that 75% of women don't get to the big O because it's a mental type of thing. But if you are in a situation where you are really into it and you really want to work on that, and there's not a low libido or there's some type of hormonal issue where they just don't want to be with you.
Well, yeah, because it's a
you can make bad sex better. It takes some time, and you're going to hurt some feelings.
Careful now.
I was at, and it happens at Publix a lot, but I ran into a young lady. I ran into a lot of people. I ran into a young lady who was maybe outside my ex, one of the most attractive people that I had ever been with. Okay. This was 30 years ago. She was an aerobics instructor, black hair, just blue eyes, just knock down, drag out, like wow. And I mean, I was so outside my coverage on this. And when we were together, it was horrible. I mean, it was just like, I mean, I felt like I was like, are you okay? And she's like, I'm fine. And I was like, it was
bad sex? Is that what
it was horrible. It was terrible. It was she just lied there. And I was like, am I doing something? I was relatively young in my sexual life. I was like, are you? And she's like, you're doing great. I'm like, is there anything I can do? She's like, no. And I'm like, okay. And it was just like,
Yeah, just wasn't
And
much there.
she had the eyes like just kind of like, and I was like, okay. And so I thought, okay, maybe it's just going to take some warming up.
Yeah.
And this was something where it didn't happen right away. We went out a few times first, and it never changed. It never changed. And I was kind of like, and I kept thinking to myself, okay, how can this be possible? Because she's an aerobic, she was a yeller, she was into it, and I was like, okay, this has got to be something with me. This has got to be, and so finally I said, listen, something happens when we're intimate together that just doesn't feel right. I'm not enjoying it because I don't feel. She's like, it's great. I really enjoy. And I'm like, okay, so this is just you. This is just and it was like, I mean, this was it.
I've seen the Tony Curry wheels
And I'm
spinning.
like,
Okay.
And I'm like, okay, well, you don't have to pat me on the head, say nice job, or scream or anything. But I mean, are you here with me? Or and it was just, and that's just, I guess. And so I ran to her. I was like, hey, and she was with her husband or whatever. And I was like, hey, and she's like, hey. I didn't see her in 30 years, but that's the part I remembered.
Hope they don't know who.
But I don't know if there was any working to do on that.
I don't know who it is because now you just told her husband. Maybe it's maybe she's good with him. Maybe it was you.
It probably was me. Society tells us that doing this is quite frankly generally bad manners. I will always tell you that farts are always funny. They're always funny. I farted in my son's face last night. It was hilarious.
Don't you remember what you told me the other day? You're spreading fecal matter.
Yeah, well, I was wearing my underwear, so I was good. Farts are always funny, particularly in elevators. But did you know that according to this doctor, a TikTok video came out last night that's been followed by over 2 million views, that holding them in is bad. Dr. Karen Rajan, an NHS surgeon, has warned that holding in your flatulence has caused the gas to enter your bloodstream
throw an embolism?
With disgusting results. In the TikTok video, she explained if you hold in a fart too long, it could be absorbed into your bloodstream and breathed out as you exhale.
Really?
The doctors racked over 2 million views for the video on interesting fart facts, which includes information on how many times a day we break wind on average, as well as the science behind why we actually fart in the first place. It claims that 14 times a day on average, the average person does it, and the more the merrier. The more you fart, the better that you are, as an important to let out the buildup of gas. There's no way to not have gas. There's different foods you can eat that will give you gas, and there's other foods that will help certainly absorb that. If someone tells you they don't fart, they're lying. You should disown them immediately, ha, ha, ha. Or they've got a bowel obstruction, which is a medical emergency.
Yeah.
The doctor also told his 4.2 million TikTok followers, by the way, it's a guy, not a girl, but his name is Karen,
and NHS,
that the average fart volume is enough to fill up a medium-sized balloon.
Well, that's why they use cow farts, the methane gas. You can power an entire house.
Yeah. He later explained did you ever lit one? Oh, I do this on the show one time.
No, because I tried when I was a teenager. I couldn't get the timing right.
They did it on Mythbusters, believe it or not.
Can you
Oh, yeah. Now, it's a lot easier to do it
naked.
Naked or with your underwear on, because obviously there's an obstruction there, and you can't do a video of your ass.
So what did they do? How did they do a fake
butt?
butt?
They did something where they actually did it in a bathtub. It was really interesting. He had a tube. It was pretty
like a catheter.
Well, they were wondering if you could actually catch a fire, and you can. Like you can start a fire, like you can burn, because there's a sphincter reflex where you fart and it kind of goes back in again, and you can actually burn your insides if you don't blow it all the way out. So it's great. We're talking about menstrual cycles. And
if you're trying to light it on fire,
and you gotta let it out.
I gotta watch that Mythbusters. Like, how did they do that?
It was a Mythbusters that never made it to the TV show, but when I was at Sanford and I had the two guys on, they did an outtake with it. It was hilarious. It was really funny. He later explained the first fart of the day is usually the biggest, and even dealt with the facts behind where our wind comes from. He added 75% of our farts are produced by bacteria in the large intestine. Digested food that isn't broken down is chewed up by bacteria that produces microscopic farts that accumulate and become one of our regular farts. 25% of farts are swallowed air that you don't burp and dissolve gases in the blood, making its way into the intestines.
So if you talk or sing a lot, you fart?
Yeah.
Do you guys have that on radio?
Huh?
So I come back from this show every day, and I'm quite burpy. That's because
you're
I'm not,
sucking air.
yeah, because I'm not voice trained or whatever, and I'm talking a lot, and I come home and for about an hour I'm burpy, but I don't fart.
Yeah. Well, that's good. It's coming out the other end.
Okay.
Shared more interesting fart facts when he explained the difference between farts that smell and those that don't. He said 99% of a fart is non-smelly gases, usually hydrogen, carbon dioxide, and methane. The other 1% are the ones that, quite frankly, will knock you off your feet. The 1% of farts that do stink are volatile sulfur compounds like hydrogen sulfide. He's racked over 5,000 comments and positive responses. My dad had a
GI problems.
Oh man,
like irritable bowel.
My friends used to come over to my house just to hear my dad fart.
So like that loud?
No, I mean my dad was kind of, my dad would let him rip in restaurants. He would just and then he got so used to doing it that he would do it not knowing he was doing. He just right in the middle, and we were so used to it, it was like no big deal. And they were loud. My dad.
I mean, did he have a condition?
He probably had IBS or something because he had a hard time pooping, and that's one thing that I hope from a genetic standpoint that I don't have. I got him that book called Far for Pooping. That was they talked about, but he used to eat prunes, like a big bowl of prunes, and he would drink like a whole thing of Metamucil every week just to stay regular. And I'm like, well, what is it? Are you drinking water? Are you eating? And he went to doctors for it.
What did they say?
They just
medical mystery.
Medical mystery. I think a lot of it was probably his food intake. A lot of it has to do with what you eat.
Yeah.
No one wants to be bloated.
No.
See, you should be happy that came out of there and not the bottom part.
That was just taking.
That was from coffee.